This podcast is not affiliated with any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous antics and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own. Should be dismissed immediately.
All right. Welcome to episode 61 of the Studio 357 Masonic podcast.
Woo.
The Studio 357.
As opposed to the other one.
Yeah, mostly because I messed up. So we're going to go with it now. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Homeward Handyman Services, the Insurance Center, Corporal Dagan Page Foundation, and of course, our lovely Patreon supporters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure they're lovely.
Yeah.
Except for
at least a couple of them.
Yeah, at least. Well, there's one that's not for sure. But,
beggars can't be choosers, though.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
We appreciate every one of them.
So, Jim, what have you been up to? You had a busy day so far.
It's been a busy week, but today specifically, Nebraska Lodge 1 did our annual trip to Independence, Missouri and Belton, Missouri, where we started the morning with the brothers at Belton Grandview Lodge 450, where Truman was both raised and he actually helped start. So they've actually, well, you can go back. We did an episode with him last year. So,
Yep.
So if you're interested in that, and then we toured his home and we went through the library. And so that started at 3:00 this morning and it's into the evening, and I haven't stopped since. But no, we had a good time, and we really appreciate the brethren down there having us in and giving us a tour.
Yeah, they're great guys.
Yeah.
I've been up to putting shelves together for our little museum that we have in the studio here.
Little museum. There's a lot of stuff in here.
There's a lot of stuff. We've found about half of it since we moved. We have considerable amount more to unpack.
It looks, just looking in this room, you've got an artifact of the week. You'd go forever.
We
Yeah.
probably could.
Yeah.
You're collecting a lot of stuff.
Speaking of that, I got to pick one of them. A lot easier to pick now because I can see most of them. Heath, what have you been up to?
Been actually back to full work since I broke my hand. I had my first full week of not light duty, and got my ass handed to me this week with work. So that's been fun. That's about it, and moving. So,
All right. And Morgan's joining us again.
Howdy.
What have you been up to, bud?
Not a whole lot, really. Mostly just vehicle maintenance, work, and that's about it.
Sums it up. All right, Jim, start us off.
Start you off. Well, we should probably introduce our guest first.
We got question number one.
Oh, do I have a question? Oh, we're going to make him do it. Okay. So tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Oh boy. Well, my name is Scott Wolter, and I'm a forensic geologist. I run a laboratory in St. Paul, Minnesota called American Petrographic Services. I started that company in 1990, and we're still going strong. Business is good, and we're very fortunate. I live in Chanhassen, Minnesota, about 1.5 miles away from Paisley Park. Do you guys ever heard of Paisley Park?
No.
Have you ever heard of the singer Prince?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. All right.
That's where he lives. I lived across the lake from Prince in a different house when I was growing up for about 30 years. And I'm the same age as Prince. Obviously, I'm a big fan. He's huge here in Minnesota, and we're going to be celebrating in about a week, a little over a week, the 10th anniversary of his death. So, it's weird. I just want to say one quick thing about Prince. I know a lot of people think they know who he is, but they really don't. Living in Chanhassen, we have always had these strange blocks of 40-acre parcels of farmland. And then about every other one, there will be apartment complexes. And it's the most unusual development of a city that I've ever seen. I've lived here since the 70s, so I've watched it grow. But I only recently found out that those farm fields that seem to be just dotted all over Chanhassen here actually was land that Prince bought, and he set aside. No development, nothing. And I only found out about this when his family took over his estate. There was, a bunch of stuff, legal stuff that went on. But now those plots are starting to be developed. And I know the city wants the tax revenue, and I can appreciate that. But I have to admit, I'm a little bit sad seeing those cornfields turn into apartment complexes. So anyway, there's a little something that you probably didn't know about Prince.
Nope. Yeah, sure didn't know that.
Not many people do.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that a forensic geologist would find? What do you do on a normal day?
Okay, good question. Well, basically what we do, the simplest way I can describe it is we do autopsies on concrete and rock. And so primarily in the construction industry. So if, someone places a sidewalk and the top starts to peel off, or it cracks or has low strength, whatever the case may be, they will take samples. They'll send them to us. We will do our autopsy, and we will determine first and foremost what caused the problem. And then, of course, the next question is who's going to pay, right? So we get involved in a lot of legal situations, but mostly it's everyday mundane things. But we do get involved in some pretty interesting and controversial projects. We did all the analysis of the fire damaged concrete at the Pentagon after 9/11 from the jet fuel fire. Yes, it was a plane that hit the building. I know a lot of people want to claim that it was a missile, but there's no evidence for that. And look, I'm all for conspiracy theories. I have no idea what happened in New York. I know Building 7 that went down. I think a day later, that was a controlled demolition. There's no question in my mind, but you can only imagine how many conspiracy theorists have contacted me over the years wanting to know what happened at the Pentagon. So, but that's probably the biggest project that we've worked on, the most high profile. But we also worked at Surfside down in near Miami, those condos that collapsed. We do get involved in a lot of catastrophic situations where people have passed away. And so it gets pretty intense sometimes. I've worked on murder cases, and of course my whole life changed in 2000 when the Kensington runestone came into our lab. And that's really what started me on this journey of, America Unearthed and book writing. And, oh my God, I've been all over the world with this damn thing, trying to figure out exactly what it is, who carved it, and why did they come here to the center of the continent in Minnesota. And I can tell you, brothers, I can now answer all those questions.
But before you get to that, though, I'm curious, how does one get into forensic geology? What got you going into that field, and what kind of study did you have to do to get to it?
Well, that is a great question. And it's interesting because I have had many young people that have contacted me that want to become forensic geologists. What do I do to become a forensic geologist? And the answer is you have to study underneath the forensic geologist if you're going to work in the industry that I work in. And, my life path took kind of a left turn at one point because I was a field geologist when I came out of college working for a gold company, and I really liked that work and I wanted to continue that work. But my dad passed away in a tragic accident, so I had to come back and help my family, and so I struggled for a couple of years trying to find work. Nobody was hiring geologists in any capacity at that time, and eventually I got hired by a company called Twin City Testing. And I was really fortunate because the guys that were running the company had foresight, and they saw that in the construction industry, there are so many different problems that come up. there has to be a way to try to figure out why those problems happened. And so they asked me to develop that expertise at the company at that time. So I did it. And there really wasn't much of a guide at that time. It was a brand new science, and we developed it for about 4.5 years. And then eventually the guy who owned that company, who promised to sell it to these guys, did not honor that commitment. So they left. And I remember when they walked out of the building in 1989, Terry Swore said to me, "Our paths will cross again." So they contacted me about 6 months later and said, "We're going to form a new company. We want you to form a sister company called American Petrographic Services." And we did that and we started in January of 1990. So, we developed a lot of the skills ourselves. There was some rudimentary stuff that the industry understood about how to look at concrete, but we really developed it to greater heights than it was at the time. So it's worked out really, really well.
And that's got to be exciting to be on the forefront of a new science. That sounds amazing to me.
Yeah, it was. I didn't really think about it that way at the time, but I saw the potential, and I knew that there were certain things that we could look at under the microscope. And I was good on a microscope, obviously my mineralogy, petrology from college, but looking at, concrete is a man-made rock, right? You take limestone, silica, a little bit of gypsum to control set, you fire it, and then you grind it up, and then you add water to it and it gets hard. So it's really, in all aspects, a man-made rock.
So you mentioned America Unearthed, and I've been a fan of that show since it came out. So I'm a little bit fanboying right now.
Oh, stop it! You are not.
But I was so excited when I found out that you were a brother, and then you actually answered my message.
Oh, of course.
The first time. And so this is probably the episode I've been most excited about since we started this 3 years ago. But so you mentioned that's what started you down this road. So how long have you been a Mason?
Well, I was raised as a master Mason in November of 2015. And I remember, the whole thing with Freemasonry was an outgrowth really of the runestone. And, I did my work on the runestone. I wrote my report in 2000, right before Christmas in 2000. And I said it was real. I said it was authentic based on a tombstone study and comparing the weathering of the inscription. And I said it was older than 200 years because the minerals began to come off the tombstones. On the runestone, they're completely gone. So it's older than that. And that's all I can say, but that's from 200 years going back from 1898 when it was pulled out of the ground, because it hasn't been in a weathering environment since. So how can it be a late 19th century hoax? That's impossible. So if you take that out of play, there's only one thing that's left. It must be genuine. And, the bottom line was, for me, I started to study all the past investigations. And I saw so much shit work and, bias and just, terrible stuff. It was not scientific method. And,
Right.
And the bottom line is, most of the academics that had a say in the authenticity of the runestone came from what I call soft science disciplines, humanities disciplines, which I don't want anyone to think that I'm criticizing them. But they are what they are. I'm talking about language. I'm talking about history. I'm talking about runology, archaeology, anthropology. These are wonderful disciplines. They're great disciplines, but they are not formally trained in scientific method. And it shows, frankly. If you don't have enough evidence, this happens to me occasionally. If I do not have enough evidence to draw a definitive conclusion, that I believe I can defend in a court of law under oath, then I will say those three little words that I don't like to say. But if I have to say them, I will say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And these academics were not able to do that. And they just threw the runestone under the bus because they didn't know what to do with it. And the best thing to do is just make it go away. And I can prove this. But any case, so I did my work, and then I got this pushback. And I remember saying to some of these people, I said, look, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Point out where I made a mistake with my geological work and I'll fix it. Well, I didn't make a mistake. They just didn't like the results. Okay. Well, guess what? Life doesn't always go your way, does it, guys?
Right.
And you gotta man up and just deal with it. And so it pissed me off. And so I decided that I trust rocks. You'll hear me say this. I trust rocks. I don't trust some people. Rocks don't give a shit. People care. Rocks don't. Right. So that's why I trust them. And the rock said it was old. It said it was authentic. That means that everything that the scholars said didn't exist in the 14th century that's on the runestone must exist. It has to, because the rock says so, right? So right. Starting in 2003 through 2005, I took 5 trips to Scandinavia, and I found everything. And of course, all that did was piss them off even more. So, I mean, what do you want from me? I mean, guys, if you're not going to do your job, it got personal. It became very personal.
Yeah.
But so then what I started to do, starting in 2005, 2006, and so on, was trying to answer the questions. Well, if this thing is real, and it was, and it's sitting in the middle of the continent, somebody carved it. They came from some place, and they came all the way over here for some reason. Those are absolute truths, right?
Right.
Now figuring them out was the difficult part. So what I began to do, and when I went over to Sweden, I spent most of my time on the island of Gotland. And all the linguistic and runological evidence that I found they said never existed, I found on medieval grave slabs that were mortared into the floors of these old churches. And that's where I found everything. But as I was going around these churches, I noticed things like, you see that red cross you have above Morgan?
Yep.
I saw that same style of cross on those grave slabs, painted on the walls and all over the place. Well, then I'm like, well, who made these churches? I learned about the Cistercians, the white monks who wore black mantles. They were led by the charismatic leader back in 1113, Bernard de Clairvaux, who wrote the charter for the Knights Templar. Well, who are the Knights Templar? I had no idea who the Knights Templar were. Well, you can see that's what happened. That's the rabbit hole that I ended up going down. And it didn't take very long. All of a sudden, Freemasonry came into the picture. And I will never forget, the first time I spoke to a group of Masons was in 2007. And it was some big event. And there was, oh my God, there was 150 people in there. And I was giving my presentation. And then I got to the hooked X symbol that's on the runestone 22 times.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't fully understand it. I was just learning about symbolism. And, the V is the feminine, the peak is the male. In an X, you got the allegorical union of male, female, heaven and earth. Dualism, right? The concept of opposites that keep things in balance. But what was the hook? I couldn't figure that out. And I asked the audience of these Freemasons, because I thought if anybody might know, they would know. And I'll never forget it. One guy raised his hand and he said, a child. And I went, oh my God, that's it. And I knew right away that that was it. And so you've got a little V, a little girl inside the womb of her mother, right? With daddy down below. And all of a sudden, the Holy Trinity, the whole, that's really what the Trinity is. And I ask people all the time, what is the Holy Trinity? And they say, well, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I go, what's the Holy Spirit? And they go, well, it's the Spirit in you. It's not very well defined, right?
Right.
Well, here's what I see. You got the Father, you got the child. Who's missing? Mama,
Mom.
right? I mean, come on, give me a break. So that was really a major moment. And I did meet the guy, and I gave him credit. I said, man, I don't know if I ever would have figured that out, but that is, how you get a feeling in your gut when you know something's right?
Yeah.
I got that. It happened like that. So anyway, I started digging in a little further, and then I ran into John J. Robinson. You guys know John J. Robinson?
No.
I recognize the
Brother
name.
wrote a book. If you haven't read it, it's mandatory. It's called Born in Blood.
Oh, it's on my shelf.
Written by
That's why-
John J. Robinson. Yeah.
That's why I recognize it. I,
I just can't
have
see
read
it
that.
because
Yeah.
it's behind the
I
TV.
knew
I
you
have-
guys knew that. It just didn't, it just wasn't at the tip of your tongue. So I read that book, and it made so much sense to me. And then I got into Brother Manly Hall. And if you have not read Manly Hall, you better.
Right.
Because he's just incredible. So I just, I started studying Freemasonry, and everything just seemed to make sense to me. It was calling to me. And I will tell you this, guys. Remember, I told you that my dad died tragically. He drowned when we were on a trip to Australia. And I remember when, they took all of his personal items. The only thing he wore all the time was a ring on his pinky. And I remember when I got home, I said, Mom, what is this thing that has this curved sword with a 5-pointed star in the middle of it? She said, oh, your dad was a Shriner. And I said, what's a Shriner? And she said, well, he was a Freemason. I go, what the hell is a Mason? He never said a word to me. And I was like 23 years old or 22. I don't remember, but he never said a word about it, but he was from that, post World War II generation. And they just, they kept everything quiet. And I can appreciate that to a point, but frankly, I think it did a lot of damage, because the most common question that I am asked by, bright young men that are going to be great brothers is, how do I get invited? Oh my God, you don't have to be invited.
Right.
Just go to the Grand Lodge website of your state, fill out a petition. We'll take it from there. So, but anyway, I mean, you knock on the door when you knock on the door. And so I was, I think I was 51 then. No, 50.
56.
It's been 10 years. Yeah. So it's 57. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I got started. And, it's been just amazing. Just amazing.
What lodge are you with now?
My home lodge is Wayzata 205, which is in it's in Wayzata, Minnesota, probably
Okay.
about 20 minutes on 394 straight out of Minneapolis.
Okay.
And then I'm a 32nd degree Scottish Rite in the Minneapolis Valley. And then my commandery is Zion number 2. And we meet at the Scottish Rite. But then I'm also a freighter with the North Dakota College of Rosicrucians. And I'm a member of a couple of other Templar orders that are non-Masonic.
Okay.
What is the most rewarding aspect of being a Mason?
Well, there are a lot of them, but I have to say, and you guys have probably experienced this. I travel a lot, and not too long ago, this was probably 6 months ago, I was flying somewhere, and a guy saw a ring that I had on, and he came up to me and he gave me a coin from his lodge. And he just said, "Hey, brother, when you get him," this is right before we took off. And he said, "Hey, brother, when you get time, come on back and let's chat." And so I went back and we had a beautiful chat. And I think one of the things about Freemasonry that I love is that when you meet a brother, you are, when you meet a stranger, you're here. When you meet a brother, you're already here because you have gone through a profound experience essentially together, right? I mean, it wasn't at the same day and time, but you know exactly what he's gone through and the obligations that we took. And you just automatically feel safe, safer than the rest of the world, that's for sure. So I think I enjoy that the most, that when I meet another brother, it's like I relax. And it's a good thing. It's beautiful. Morgan, what do you think? I'm putting you on the spot, brother. Sorry about that.
No, you're all good. I'm a man of very few words, just like Jeff said.
Okay. So can I tell you a quick story that relates to what you just said?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I might be stepping on some toes here, but if I do, you guys will get over it. I'm a Minnesota Vikings football fan. Who do you guys root for?
Well,
Steelers.
that's the thing. So I'm not a pro football fan because here in Nebraska we don't have a pro team.
Yeah.
So I cheer for my Huskers.
Okay,
but beyond that, I don't have a dog in the fight. And when it comes to NFL teams,
Yeah,
we
me
got
either.
room on the bandwagon. The Purple Pride, you can come on, brother. What about the rest of you? You said Steelers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, you got your head coach is our former defensive coordinator. And he's been there, 18 years? Did he just retire?
I believe so, yeah.
I think he did, yeah. Anyway, so a good friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago was a guy named Bud Grant. Do you guys remember Bud Grant?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, are you serious? He's in the hey. Here's a trivia question for you. You guys can use this. You'll thank me. You're going to owe me a beer for this. There are only 2 men that are in both the NFL Hall of Fame and the Canadian Professional Football Hall of Fame. Can you name them?
No.
Okay,
Close.
one is Bud Grant. Bud coached the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to 4 Grey Cups, 4 Super Bowls in Canada before he came to Minnesota. He took the Vikings to 4 Super Bowls, but we lost all 4 of them. Bud was known for being a man of very few words. He would just look at you and you would piss yourself if you did something wrong. He was that kind of guy. Anyway, when I went to college, I played football up at UMD in Duluth, Minnesota. And I played 4 years up there, and I played 4 years of minor league ball, and I lived to tell about it. But anyway, when I was up there, I met Bruce Grant, one of Bud's sons, and he became my best friend. He died about 7 or 8 years ago from glioblastoma, but brain cancer. But anyway, I got to know his dad really well. And one time when we were in college, we were playing basketball on the court in the backyard. And, it's a hot summer day. So we come on in, and Bruce's mom gave us water. And Bud's watching TV, and we're sitting on the couch kind of in the back of the room. And I'm talking like I do. And at one point, Bud turns around and he goes, "Scott." And I went, and then he looked at me and he said, "You never learn anything when you're talking."
Wow.
You know what I said after that?
Nothing.
Nothing. So anyway, Morgan, the whole point of that story is sometimes it's better to be seen than heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going back just a little bit, I think I realized that we didn't really tell the any of the listeners the backstory on the runestone. You want to give us a little bit
Okay.
of backstory and what that's
Yeah.
about?
Well, I don't want to run down the rabbit hole too far, but for people that don't know that are listening, the Kensington runestone is a stone artifact that was found in the fall of 1898 by a Swedish immigrant farmer by the name of Olaf Oman. He was clearing trees in preparation for farming, and he and his two oldest sons, they were all together at this moment. They cut off the roots around the base of this 25 to 30-year-old aspen tree, and then they took a winch and they tipped over the tree, and tightly wrapped in the roots almost directly underneath the tree was this 202-pound stone that pulled up when the tree fell. And eventually they noticed there was a long inscription carved in runes. There's 9 lines on the face side. There's 3 on the side for a total of 12. And, you know, the inscription is really fascinating because what people think it is a story about an expedition that came into the heartland, a battle with Native Americans. Some of their men died, and they talk about where their ships are and all this stuff. And so anyway, this was sent to the University of Minnesota in 1899, where the first professor of Scandinavian languages, Olaus Breda, looked at the inscription, couldn't make out even half of the symbols. He didn't know what the hell they were. So he said, "Oh, this is a clumsy fake." And, you know, I talked about it before that, you know, people being unable to say, "I don't know." This is where it started, because when you're in academia, especially in these soft science fields, once your predecessor says something, you don't embarrass him, you don't step on him, you just keep your mouth shut and you just toe the line, right? And as silly as that sounds, that's the way it is.
Mm.
And it's you know, and they say history changes one death at a time. That's true. Now, fortunately, we now have the internet. So things are changing. You can't hide behind academia anymore. But anyway, so it's authenticity has been argued back and forth, and you know, right now it's considered a fake, but obviously it's not. Now, one of the things that happened when I became a Mason, I told you I was raised as a Master Mason in November of 2015, but my Masonic mentor, a guy by the name of John Freeberg, he said, "Well, Scott, that's great. We signed you up for the Scottish Rite and the York Rite." So I did them both at the same time.
Ooh,
wow.
And our valley in Minneapolis does all 29 degrees twice a year.
Okay.
So there's no other valley that does that in the country, probably in the world. So anyway, while I'm doing the Scottish Rite, I'm doing the York Rite. But what I wanted to tell you is when so Jim, did you do the Cryptic Council degrees?
Yes.
Do you remember the Select Master?
Vaguely.
Okay, it was about it's Book of Enoch stuff.
Right.
And it's the secret vault, which is 9 levels below the Sanctum Sanctorum, where a copy of all the true treasures were housed. Do you remember that stuff?
I do remember that. Yes.
And then
Yes.
there was a guy who was guarding and he fell asleep and the guy got down there and then there's blood and do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, after the degree took place, there was a lecture by one of the white hats, and you know what a white hat is.
Right.
33rd degree. And I remember at one point, you know, we had already learned about, the secret vault and the 9 levels, right? And we learned that the 3 grand masters, King Solomon, Hiram Abiff, and Hiram, king of Tyre, who was in Lebanon, where all the workforce and the wood came from. Those 3 grand masters built the secret vault. But then in the lecture, the white hat said, and the other 8 arches were built by 22 men from Gebel. And I went, 8 and 22, those are the first 2 numbers on the Kensington runestone. 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians. And I went, that can't be a coincidence. And then I went to John after the lecture was over. I said, John, is there a ritual book for this degree? He said, yes. I go, give me that. And oh my God, boom, boom, boom. The runestone. So what I learned is that the runestone contains symbolism, allegory, code, and numerical placements that are unbelievable. I'll give you an example. You tell me, guys, if you think this is a coincidence. One of the problems with the runestone is there are 8-letter G's, but they're backwards and they have a punch in the cup of the symbol. We've never seen that before, so it's wrong. No, dipshit. No. All it means is you've never seen it before.
Right.
You say it. You've never seen it. Okay. And frankly, what these guys should have done is recognize that they're looking at the first and only of its kind. What a rare, amazing opportunity you could have had if you had your brain screwed on right.
Yeah.
Okay. There are 8 strange G ruins, 8 Goths. There are 10 WV ruins, 10 of them. And they are not normal either. It's like a trident. You know what a trident is?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then one going down, but it's got a dot in the left open space there. Never seen that before, so it's bad, right? No, you've never seen it before. 10 men red from blood, 10 men by the inland sea to look after our ships. The number 10 is on the runestone inscription twice. And there's 10 of these strange ruins. There are 14 individual numbers on the Kensington runestone. The date 1363, carved in pentatic numbers in Arabic placement, is 1362. That's 4. You add up all the rest of the numbers, there are 14. In the inscription on the split side, it says 14 days journey from this island. And there are 22 hooked X's on the Kensington runestone. Do you remember it says 8 Goths and 22 Northmen? All of the numbers are confirmed by the strange runes that never existed. Now, this is either a 4 for 4 coincidence, 8, 10, 14, 22, or it's not. It's not.
Right.
So then the next, do we score again?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. I got the TV right here. My squad. We're in the playoffs, guys. Sorry. You did score. I told you. It's 5-1. Yay. Okay. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because I started to look into Hebrew mysticism. Now, the inscription says this. Keep track of the numbers, guys, okay? 8 Goths and 22 Northmen. What's that? 8 and 22.
30.
On this acquisition business from Vinland far to the west, we had a camp near 2 shelters. What's that?
32.
32. 1 day's journey north.
Huh.
Hmm.
That's a
Another
familiar number.
another coincidence? So, what is it about these numbers? The 10, if we go back to the select master, a copy of all the true treasures were taken down to the sanctum sanctorum, below the Holy of Holies, where the original treasures were. So there's 2 of everything, right? What are some of the treasures in the Holy of Holies? Do you guys know what any of them are? You do.
The 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod.
Yep. How many commandments?
10.
Well, 10. Yeah, there you go. There's your 10.
And you got 10 above and 10 below. 10 occurs twice on the Kensington runestone. 10 men red from blood and death, 10 men by the inland sea to look after our ships. Now, the other numbers that were singled out by using the number of symbols, right? We got 8, 14, and 22. Why are they significant? I'll tell you. Obviously, 8 is a very sacred number to the Templars. Take a look at that cross. How many points are on that cross?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right? Do you guys know how many bones you have in your head?
No.
No.
8 in your cranium, 14 in your face, for a total of how many?
22.
22.
Must be a coincidence, huh?
Must be.
And here's another interesting question. Do you know how many vertebrae you have in your spinal column?
Ooh, I did know this at one time.
I don't.
I'm going to say 8, 10, or 22. Higher. I was wrong.
IR mechanic. 33?
33.
Hmm.
So now I think you guys are beginning to understand where some of our sacred numbers come from, where our degrees come from. And obviously, the carver of the Kensington runestone wasn't a simple farmer who was not a Freemason. We're talking about a deeply initiated Cistercian monk back in the 14th century. And there's a lot more that's encoded within the inscription that I've discovered working with a lot of really smart people, including some Freemasons. And this is the most important historical artifact ever found on this continent, in my opinion, and it's treated like garbage. But I know why they treat it like garbage. And we have to kind of take a turn, guys, and get a little bit serious, because as you guys know, in the last year, we are now finding out how screwed up the world truly is, how screwed up our government is on both sides of the aisle. And I don't care what you say, they all have to go.
Yeah.
The whole system has to crash. But our system of government was created by some brilliant people who were all Freemasons. Now, you guys have probably not heard this, but I'm going to tell you something that's documented. I can go get the source right now. 53 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Master Masons. They were also Knights Templar. They just didn't tell anyone.
Okay.
So Ben Franklin was the one that essentially came up with our system of government, the separation of powers. And you know where he got it? He got it from the Iroquois Nation of indigenous people.
Oh.
Their system of government has a separation of powers. and their Supreme Court equivalent are the old women. That's where the wisdom comes from, right? The ancient goddess, one of her names was wisdom. So my point is this. We are going through some shit right now, and there's no other way to describe it. We'll survive this. And I don't care who your favorites are politically, but if they're on the list, done. Done. No discussion, no debate, done. The stuff they're doing is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And what's really unacceptable, and I don't mean to get too serious, guys, but you need to face the truth about this. How many times are you scrolling on your phone and see some BS that talks about the Freemasons and their satanic rituals?
Yeah.
All too often.
All the time.
All the time, right? It's almost every day. So we know that's a bunch of BS, right? I keep telling people, I never got the memo. I didn't get invited. I must not be. I probably would have been invited. I mean, let's be honest, right? There is none of that. That's not us. We know what they're talking about, but that's not what we do. So I think part of what we really need to do going forward is to be sure and educate people, and and just say, look, that's bullshit. It's just plain old bullshit. And that's one of the things that I'm going to start doing more now, is bringing this up, especially if I'm talking to Brother Masons, because there are people out there, because they've contacted me and said, do you guys really do that? I'm like, no, man, no. But we're an easy target, right? Because everything is done in secret. But if they truly understand the history and realize that our founding fathers set up this beautiful system of government, frankly, they didn't plan for the craziness that's interjected, and, special interests. And, it wasn't designed for people to be career politicians. Back in the day, you would come off the farm, you'd come out of the plant, you'd come out of, wherever you were working, and serve your government for a short time, and then you went back, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way it was designed, but obviously it's morphed into something much different. But the template that our brothers set up was brilliant, and I think it will survive. And the other thing about our system of government that is so amazing is that we can tweak it and make it better. And in some ways, all of this craziness that we're going through is showing us what we don't want, right? And so I think that we can all come together, whether you lean Republican or Democrat or independent. We all have the same needs and desires. And we love our families, and, we love our country. And part of my mission is to try to heal this situation that we're going through right now. But you know what? I'm confident we will. So
yeah, I agree.
I am. So sorry, I got a little heavy. I started on the runestone, and now we're going to fix America.
It's got to start somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Demonstrate that love never ends through the commitment to support past and present service members, the communities that surround them, and the loved ones of those whom we will never forget. Visit deganpage.org for more information. At Homeward Handyman Services, we pride ourselves on being honest and giving every job the attention it deserves. Owned and operated by a master mason with 2 decades of expertise in home repair. We are bonded and insured, and we carry the highest standards when it comes to taking care of your home. Whether you need a faucet changed or a light remodel, we can take care of your home improvement needs. Call Michael at 402-915-0824 today for a free estimate.
When it comes to something as important as insurance, it's imperative that you work with an agency who has an in-depth knowledge of multiple insurance products, companies, and guidelines, not just one. We are completely independent agents, and we work for your best interests. We are Mason-friendly. We have locations in Fremont and Elkhorn. We provide policies for virtually all of your personal and commercial needs, including health and dental. Visit our website at www.theinsurancecenterinc.com. We're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Tell us about your newest book. Give us a little bit of an outline and what we can look forward to in that book and where we can get it.
Okay. Uh-oh. That was holding up my here, I'll have to put that right back.
Put the night on it.
Put the night on it. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. There. Of course, we'll have the night hold it up. So this is the new book right here. And it is called The Greatest Templar Tale Never Told, the Sinclair-Wemyss Journals. And it's selling like crazy. I mean, it's really doing well, and it should. And not because I'm a great writer. This is not me. What this is basically about, 10 years ago, a woman contacted me and she said, I've got the journals of Earl Henry Sinclair. And I went, sure you do. Delete. The next day she emailed me again. She emailed me. She didn't text me. She emailed me again. She said, no, really, I've got the journals of Earl Henry Sinclair. I go, no, boom, delete. And then a week later, she hit me again. She said, no, I'm serious. I'm paraphrasing, right? I'm serious. I've got the journals of Earl, and she sent me some pictures. And then I got on the phone and said, hello, my name is Scott Wolter, and away we went. Well, what happened is she was doing genealogy on her own family, her own background. And she got back about 6 generations, and she realized that her great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a guy by the name of John Wemyss. We call him Junior because his dad was John Wemyss as well. He fought in the French and Indian Wars. He fought in the Revolution. He fought in the Third Conflict. And he ended up moving to North Carolina. And then when he was 52 years old, the government issued him a land grant in in the territory of Tennessee, what is now Tennessee. And he went to a small town called Greenville, and he lived there until he died in 1812, I think at the age of 71. And that was her grandfather. So she goes to this tiny little historical society, genealogical society in Greenville. It's basically a 2-bedroom residential home. They converted into a historical society, and she asked about John Wemyss. And the guy that was working there was a young college guy, kid that was working in the summertime. And he took her down to the basement, and there was an old chest there that had been rescued from a fire in the old Greenville church that burned down in 1880. And in this chest was a leather saddlebag. And inside the saddlebag were 20 small books and what she called a leather burrito, which was a map. And she brought them up, and she was looking at them on the table, and it was late in the day. And the young guy said, hey, I'm going to be closing soon. I got to put some stuff away in the basement, but you got to leave pretty quick. So she took the saddlebag, put it in her bag, and walked out with them. She stole them. Well, I have mixed feelings about that. I'm certainly not a proponent of theft, but if they had, obviously, if they knew what they had, we would have heard about them. Yeah. So who knows how long they would have sat there? Maybe they would have got thrown away. Who knows? Any case, so she brought him back, and she had driven to Tennessee she was living in Georgia at the time. She drove back to Georgia. She looked at him a little bit, And then she put them in the closet and didn't look at them again for about 10 years. This was in 2004. Well, she was watching America Unearthed.
Huh.
And she heard me say the name Earl Henry Sinclair. Well, in the journals, the name Henricus Santa Claro, that's the Latin spelling of his name. That's what his name was. And so she decided to dig in and translate them. Now there are 20 books. The first 13 are in Latin. The next 2 are in Old English. If you think Latin's bad, try Old English. And then the last 5 that were written by John Weems Sr. and Jr. were in modern English. The first entry that Earl Henry made was in 1353, the day his father gave him the first journal and said, I want you to write things down so you will remember them when you're a man, when you're an adult. And later that following spring, his father took him to the Western lands for the first time, to North America. That was in 1353. In 1395 and in 1398, Earl Henry is now in his late 40s. He came over to the Western lands with 8 ships loaded with Templar treasure that was taken from the port of La Rochelle in 1307. Do you remember October 13th, 1307?
Yep.
When all those treasures disappeared to history? Well, they didn't disappear. They went to Scotland and they hid them in King's Caves, a place that King Robert the Bruce had visited about 3 months before that. He was scouting locations. They spent some time in King's Caves. They moved to Kilwinning Abbey in Scotland and eventually over to the Wemyss Caves. These Wemyss. And they were hidden there along with the Templars that escaped the persecution, and their descendants lived in those caves for 2 generations. Now, if we go back to 1307, 7 years later, remember, they escaped to Scotland. In 1314 was something called the Battle of Bannockburn. Have you guys heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the greatest victory for the Scots in their history. They defeated the English at the Battle of Bannockburn. And there had been long persistent rumors that the battle was turned when a cavalry of knights wearing white tunics with red crosses came across over the hill, entered the battle, and turned the tide for the Scots. In the journals, Earl Henry talks about that. It happened. It's not a myth. And so what happened is, because of their service at Bannockburn, the Scottish earls were obligated to protect those Templars. And they did that, and their descendants. And in 1395 and 1398, when Earl Henry brought the treasures that they had been hiding over to North America, he also brought 120 remaining Knights Templar. Because at that time, the plague was ravaging through Europe. They had been excommunicated. They had no reason to stay. They said, screw it. We'll take our chances over there. You know, those native women, they're pretty cute. They did. And the reason that this story is so amazing, one of the things that makes it so amazing, the reason they brought the treasures over and they buried them in multiple places on several islands, and yes, one of them was Oak Island, was they wanted that money to be used for someday to establish what they call in the journals a free Templar state. They also call it the New Jerusalem. Brother Francis Bacon, who appears in the journals, called it the New Atlantis, a place where people could live free from the tyranny of the monarchs of Europe, free from the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church. Funny, who suffered from that?
Right.
The Templar.
Yeah. So those treasures were to be used to establish a sanctuary where they could be free from that crap, right? Well, you
Yeah.
know how this story ends, right? But those treasures were guarded by the natives for 400 years, 15 generations. The leader of the indigenous people, when Earl Henry was over there, he said, "You are our brothers." They bonded through ritual and intermarriage. You know, they practice Freemasonry just like we do, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The natives do. It's called the Medewin. I wrote about it in my book, Akhenaten. It's the same death and resurrection ritual that we do. Frankly, I think it's more interesting, but it's the same thing. They've been practicing it for thousands of years. So I hate to break it to you, brothers. This Freemasonry developed in 1717 in the Grand Lodge of England, when 4 already existing lodges came together. That's BS. But they said to Earl Henry, "You are our brothers. This is important to you, means nothing to us. We will guard these treasures." And they did that for 400 years. But the obligation was every generation was to visit the Western lands to check on the treasures twice in your lifetime, once with your father, once with your son. And they did that for 15 generations. And that's the story that's in here. All of the journals that were written by every generation. It's incredible. And I mean, when you start reading these entries, brothers, you will not stop. I've had people tell me I blew through it in 1 day, 2 days. And some people said I had to stop because I didn't want it to end. And all I do is provide commentary, and I vet a lot of the stuff to see if it's true, because the woman who stole them is a shady character. And I wasn't ready to publish this for 10 years because I'm not going to publish bullshit.
Right.
So I can guarantee you this will be, as Freemasons, it'll hit you in a deeper place. You will not read a better book in your life. And I know that's saying something. It's not me. All I do is commentary. These things speak for themselves, and they're simply incredible.
That's why I haven't started it yet. Mostly because we just moved and we're trying to put the house together, but like I want to commit the time to spend on this book. Like
It won't. Once you get going, it won't take you long, brother. I mean, I'm serious. When I read them the first time, I'm just like, and some of the things that we discover are pretty incredible. Like, I feel pretty confident we know the name of the monk who carved the Kensington runestone. Swear to
Really?
God, I'm not kidding you. You know what? I'm not going to say any more. You read it. You tell me what you think.
All right, that's fair.
Well, let's put it this way. You guys remember the movie National Treasure?
Yeah.
It's that story, but on steroids. And it's true. And it's true.
That's awesome.
The last chapter in the book is called Analysis. And that's where I present the evidence as I see it. And, why I think these are authentic. And to me, that's one of the most important chapters. And that, of course, I did write. But if you weren't proud to be a Mason before or a Templar, it'll make you even more proud.
Mhm.
That's it. We're done working on the house. I'm just going to read the book now.
There you go.
I might have to read a book for the first time in like 10 years.
Wait a minute. That means you didn't read a book while you were in school?
Not in high school.
That's my boy.
We're gonna have a talk after this.
Well, I just it's selling really good, and did you guys, if you haven't seen this, you should watch the podcast I did on the Y-Files. Do you know the Y-Files?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. AJ Gentile, he has his own podcast now. It's called the Y-Files Basement.
Yeah.
And I did that with him a little over a month ago, and it's got over 1.8 million views.
Wow.
And
I
it was
one will not.
well, you're going to beat it with 2 million, right?
Right.
No, you know what? That's not important. I mean, it is nice, to have that, but he's got such a big platform. But
Right.
I mean, I'll talk to anybody that, wants to have a serious conversation, a fun conversation, and talk about things that, that are important. And especially us as Masons, what's important, to us. And
Yep.
this is, can I just give you one really innocuous thing that
Absolutely.
I thought really said a lot, but most people won't catch it. So in the 1660s, I think it's 1665 or 1663, I forget. One of the Weems, the Sinclairs had the obligation and the journals for 5 generations. Then they got transferred to the Weems, who did it for 10 generations. And this is like the second to the last generation, 1663. He's talking about being over in North America and seeing these large animals with flat tails that could cut down trees. He didn't know what it was. He'd never seen one before.
Yeah.
Well, that may not seem like a big deal, but I went back and I looked it up. The beaver was hunted out of the British Isles, England and Scotland, Ireland, in like the 14th century. They were reintroduced in 2004. So for what, 500 years, 600 years, they didn't have them. And even in the 1660s, that would have been about 300 years later, he wouldn't know what a damn beaver was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and he has to describe it. And I just found that very compelling, because he would have said beaver, right? Or whatever the word was for beaver.
Right.
But he didn't. He didn't know what it was. He'd never seen one. So that was consistent with reality. And it's just a small thing. I got a whole bunch more, but it's one of those innocuous things that most people would never think about, but actually says a lot.
Yeah. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure to interview you on our show.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we interview a brother and make a new friend is great. This one's a little special for me.
Hey, I have to apologize. We went on our trip, and Jan, did we not talk about it a number of times? What? About doing the show? Yeah. And then we had a little bit of an emergency on the way back, and I felt so bad, and I'm just so glad we got a chance to do this. And if you guys want to do it again sometime, I'm definitely up for it.
Yeah.
Very
Next
cool.
time you take, we're only 5 hours away, but next time you take a trip down south, we'll have to get you in our studio. Maybe we'll show you around our Scottish Rite.
I would love that. or you know what? If you ever want me to come out there and lecture to the brothers, I'd be happy to do it. There's your excuse to get us out there.
Yep.
There
Yep.
we go.
Worshipful Master. Let's set that up.
All right.
Oh, is worshipful? I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm
Well-
the sitting master for a lodge this year. So
Okay. Well, if you're interested, just let me know and we'll set it up. It's a short jaunt. And I don't know if I told you guys this, but when we came down or came out that way, we spent the night in Kearney, Nebraska.
Oh, yeah. Carney. Yeah.
Yep.
Kearney. And the reason we stopped there is because there's a restaurant. What's it called?
Cunningham's.
Cunningham's. That's it.
Yep.
And they have roulette peppers. Have you ever heard of those?
No.
mm-mm.
Roulette peppers are a Japanese pepper called shishido peppers, but they call them roulette peppers because every fourth or fifth one is hot. The rest aren't. And
Oh,
you just eat them with salad dressing and they are fantastic. So that's sort of become a place for us to target on our way out.
yeah.
But anyway, and the rest of the food is great. Of course, they have beer flights, which I'm a big fan of. But while we were out there, and we took our camper with us, it
Uh-huh.
was so windy because we were trying to beat that storm
Yeah.
that we had to stay an extra night because it was just too windy. We didn't want to drive. So we spent 2 days in Kearney, but it was great. We ate there both nights and it was great.
Yeah. It's a good little
Mhm.
smaller city.
And that's actually where we have our annual communication for the Grand Lodge in Nebraska every year too.
Oh.
So
Is that right?
that is
Yeah.
correct.
Yep.
Ah,
Right across the parking lot from Cunningham's.
Right.
okay. Well, and invite me. I'll do a lecture at that and we'll go have shishitos.
Absolutely. That's a great idea.
Perfect.
Hell
right.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
anyway, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. I kind of want to give Morgan a chance. You got anything? Come on, man.
do you want to do the chapeau for the?
I don't
Hey,
know.
Joe,
Yeah.
how much longer do you want to stay on the show?
Or are
Uh-oh.
you gonna kill me?
No, no, what?
Wait a sec. What's going on here?
What degree is this? Go for it.
What? So I watched your podcast on the Y files.
Oh, you
You
did?
mentioned
Okay.
the, I believe Joe did as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's what's up with the green jar? Because
All right. Well, if I'll just take a minute and explain it to you. Well, we have another person that we've been working with for 20 years that worked for an agency that did things to keep us all safe. That's a long story, but Don is his name, and his best friend purchased a document called the Cremona. We now call the Cremona document, which basically is an update of all the Templar. I know you guys want to know the Wild One 6-1. Yes. Okay.
Oh yeah.
But he purchased this document that basically was the last update of all the Templar records, communications, maps, artifacts. He bought it in Rome in 1971. And over the years, he passed away in 2000, and he disseminated all this material to his colleagues in the agency with strict instructions upon their desks. This material needs to go to Don Root. And when Don gets something, he'll call and say, John Drake died. I got a package. And I say, don't open it. And then we drive out to New York and we open it and we record it. So this has happened 7 or 8 times. The last time we got a map and some notes about something called the Yeshua Scroll. Do you guys know who Yeshua is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus, right? So there's a lot more to the story, but the bottom line is in August, we went way up in the Adirondacks. We took a float plane, landed on a lake. We had 2 canoes and we paddled over to a spot. We followed the proper azimuth. We pasted off. We started metal detecting. We hit trash twice, but the third time we hit pay dirt, the green jar. Inside the green jar was documents that had been rolled up and sealed inside a designer placemat, encased in very fine grained, coarse angular sand that kept it dry. It sucked up any moisture, but this thing was sealed with wax, so it was dry as a bone. But long story short, the tradition, the Templar tradition, called the Order of the Grail. It's kind of interesting. The word Grail is encrypted in the stone, the Kensington runestone. That's one of the codes I was talking about. But the Order of the Grail translated the message from Aramaic, which would have been the language Jesus would have used in his time, into English, and then they encrypted it into these 6 pages. And it's him talking in the first person. And there's some pretty heavy stuff in there. It's interesting. I'll just tell you this. People have asked me, what do you, has the scroll messages changed your opinion of Jesus? And the answer is yes. Now, my dad was a Mason. I didn't know that at the time, but we never went to church, and I'm not knocking church. I'm not knocking that at all. It just wasn't my dad's jam, and it's not my jam. I'm a very spiritual person, but organized religion is not for me. So I never had that in my life. I never had any of that indoctrination, and that's what it is. Let's just call it what it is. And it's a fear-based religion. And so I didn't have to get past any of that. And I can remember when I was in high school and college, and I saw some people who would just get crazy, praise and, all this, and that's fine. But I just thought it was silly, frankly. And I thought, what if this guy, Jesus, suddenly just came back today and he saw how many people, I just thought the whole thing it didn't make any sense to me. And I just thought this Jesus guy I didn't think much of him. But you know what? After reading the scroll, I want to sit down and have a beer with this guy. My opinion has changed. And I can tell you this. You remember we talked about the hooked X?
Mm-hmm.
It's on the runestone 22 times. It's on other runestones that have been found. It's all through the journals, and it's all through the Cremona document material, and they are separated in time, space, and individuals. There is no connection. And when the hooked X was finally figured out, essentially what it says to me is that the true tradition of the Templars, who are the ideological and biological descendants of Jesus and Mary and John the Baptist and that Essenic tradition, that is the true ideology that they embraced. A dual-gendered God religion that is very clear in the document was hijacked by the Romans and they created in 325 AD at the Council of Nicaea the religion that became Roman Catholicism, that is based on the physical death and resurrection of Jesus. Well, according to him, he never died. Now, I've always believed that the death and resurrection story of Jesus is just another version of our degrees. He stumbles 3 times, right? Do you remember the 3rd degree? So, but the truth is even more fascinating and more incredible, in my opinion, than the nonsense that the church made up. Because that's what they did. They just made it up. And the reason that the Templars became so rich and powerful is because during the time of the First Crusade, when Jerusalem was under their control, they weren't doing it for the Roman Church. They simply pretended to be Catholic. Remember, they were Gnostic Christians, just like Jesus and Mary and John the Baptist. That's the truth. That's what he says in the document. But when the Templars were in Jerusalem during the time of the First Crusade, they established a base of operations in the region so they could go and round up stuff. Do you remember those treasures that were brought over?
Yeah.
It wasn't just gold and silver and jewels. It was artifacts. It was arks, plural. Bone boxes with the remains of people like Jesus, son of Joseph, Mary Magdalene, and others. Now think about this. If you've got the bones of Jesus, that's pretty powerful leverage against the church, isn't it?
A little bit.
Just a little bit. Now is the story beginning to make sense? This is truth, brothers. And this isn't just what I figured out on my own. He confirmed it all.
Yeah.
He confirms it all. And I think that dual gendered God religion that he and his family were preaching, the balance between male and female, that the Romans tipped out of balance, we got to get back into balance and fix it. Because without women, we're nothing. They're
Right.
the life givers. And they need to be treated that way. And so that's what he says. And the reason I'm embracing it is because I've been saying that ever since I studied the runestone and the hooked X. And now he's saying it himself, if you choose to believe that. I just want to make sure one last thing, guys. You asked, by the way.
I know.
Morgan, you started this whole mess. He was laying in the weeds saying nothing, and then when we're about to stop, he drops the bomb. But I just, this is all tied up with what we talked about before, all the craziness that's happening in the world. It's also tied in with precession. The age of Pisces, the fish, is over. Aquarius is now beginning. And it's not an accident that all this stuff is coming down now. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, Jesus's scroll has come forward. And, we found it, we decoded it. This is what it says. I'm not trying to preach anything. I've told you as my brothers what I believe and what I think of it. And I have a right to think what I want.
Sure.
Just like you might say, that's BS. I don't believe a word of it. That's your choice. And I'm not trying to preach or proselytize. I'm just telling you what it says and telling you what I think. And that's it.
Yeah.
But it's a big deal. And all I can say to the world is, ready or not, here it comes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
All right, well, we'll do our last segment. Morgan, if you want to grab that thing on the top there,
Which thing on top?
the thing on top, the top shelf, the fuzzy thing,
The fuzzy thing?
The fuzzy
hold that-
thing.
hold that in front of the camera. This
Are we
is
going to do a ritual?
No.
no.
Oh, nice.
So this we picked this up at an antique store. It's a very, very old chapeau.
Yes. Are
I'm not
those
sure how old.
ostrich feathers on there?
Yes.
Nice.
Do a little spin for it.
Oh yeah, do a spin. Do a model it, Morgan.
Oh, look at that.
You're supposed to spin.
Yeah, you're supposed to spin. We want to see you.
Oh, I'm supposed to spin.
Yeah.
Hey Morgan, if you need a job as a model, I'd say you're good for it.
Yeah, you're SOL kid.
I love it. That's an old one. That's probably 1800s, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty old.
Wow.
Very delicate.
Nice.
But when we get you down here to Nebraska, we'll show you. We have a whole museum set up here.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Well, let's do that seriously. And I see you got the Shriner's blanket over there.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, we are all Shriners. Heath and myself and Jim are Scottish Rite Masons, and then Jim is a York Rite Mason.
Okay. And so Morgan, you're just a Blue Lodge.
Yes, sir.
Are you thinking about pursuing additional light?
Yeah, I'm thinking about York Rite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, brother, when you go through, you have the Royal Arch, there's 4 degrees there. Then you go to the Cryptic Council, there's 3 there. And then, the chivalric degrees. But in the Cryptic, the second one, the middle one is Select Master. Remember we talked about that, and it's basically the runestone degree. That's what I'm calling it. By the way, I wrote a paper and I submitted it to the Philalethes, and they accepted it and they published it.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
and the only other thing that I will say, we have the Runestone Museum in Alexandria, Minnesota. When I go up to my North Dakota lodge for my Rosicrucian college, we go right through Alexandria. And about 15 miles away is the farm where Olaf found the stone. And now it's a park. It's a county park. It's beautiful. And they've preserved the house and the land. It's all great. About 4 or 5 years ago, hey, you want to pull that out, Jan? The metal. It's right there. It's in the box. So what our commandery asked me to do was to lead a tour of the farm. And I've spent a lot of time studying there, and it's in the white one, the long white one. I think that's it. So I didn't know any of this was going to happen. We probably had, 75 people there? Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, so I took them to the place, the exact spot where the runestone was found. And they asked me to say something, and I was getting ready to say something. And then all of a sudden, the Grand Commander, Jeff Nelson, gets up. And all of a sudden, I realized that this was all a setup. So our chaplain consecrated the ground where the runestone was found, right?
Okay.
And then Jeff presented me with this.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that's an awesome jewel, but that's for, what did it say? Meritorious service. The point is, I'm not showing you that to brag or anything like that. Our commandery has accepted the Kensington runestone as a part of our history, because it is.
Right.
And so anyway, know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all done. I'll stop.
Honestly, this is just like sitting here watching TV for me. So this is it's fantastic. So
Well, it's
listen,
unfair because I don't have a beer yet. but I will in a second.
Mine's empty, but I will in a second as well. Yeah, listen, we have each other's phone numbers, emails. We'll be in touch. We'll get
Okay.
together and make some stuff happen.
Mhm.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Hey, if anybody's interested, you want to see the books, just go to my website, which is scottfwolter.com. Or if you want to engage and see my blog, I blogged on every single episode we did of America Unearthed and some of the other shows that I've been on. So go to scottwolteranswers.blogspot.com and you'll see some great stuff. So anyway, thank you for having me, brothers. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you. Can't wait to throw one back in person.
Likewise.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.